High school sports are changing, not someday, not slowly, but right now. This week, we're talking about a new IHSA bylaw that allows student athletes to participate in limited, non school events during their season. On paper, it sounds reasonable, flexible, even athlete friendly, but rules don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in a world shaped by money, recruiting, exposure, and pressure, and that world is moving fast. Tonight's conversation isn't about whether kids should chase opportunity. It's about what happens when individual opportunity starts competing with team commitment, especially in a sport like football, where Friday night has always meant something bigger than just exposure. This episode might make some people uncomfortable or angry, and that's okay because when you care about high school sports, when you've lived them the right way, it's hard not to feel something when you see where this road might lead. So, we're going to ask the tough questions, and this is the Varsity Voices. So, Dan, the proposal 11 that passed from the IHSA, it kind of flew under the radar, right? Because the big news was a proposal that passed regarding playoff expansion. Now, both of them have a significant impact on high school sports, but I don't think people realize what the potential impact could be that this proposal 11 could have on high school sports.
Yeah, Joe, I think there's, high school sports are so varied in how they operate, how often you compete, how you practice, that trying to have one bylaw that fits perfectly with everyone. I think when you look at certain cases, you look at a case that maybe spurred this on. If you take a cross country runner who wants to run in a fundraising event on a weekend and you say she can't do that or he can't do that, and you take away their eligibility, it seems ridiculous, right? To say that. Now you take that same bylaw and you add it to football, and now you've got all these other things that open up and potential for issues. And I don't know if, I'm sure people have thought about it, but I'll probably, I don't know, sound a certain way, but there's opportunities for money to be made. So you're gonna see some things happening that you haven't seen in the past.
Right. I agree. So let's tell people a little bit, or just kind of the key details of the proposal, Dan, and it's Proposal 11, which was passed by the member schools of the IHSA. And what it does is it allows student athletes to compete in two non-school competitions in the same sport during the IHSA season, right? A third non-school competition is also permitted if it's sanctioned by the sport's national governing body. I don't know who that is, right? But it's related to, the bylaw change relates to a broader push, and it's all around right to play, right? So,
Yeah.
and that's aimed at kind of giving student athletes more flexibility, compete outside of just school-sponsored teams during their season without losing their eligibility. And you just had a great example. I think I saw another one about a golfer, right?
Right.
A really good golfer, and he wanted to play in a tournament, outside of his school golf team, and he was declared ineligible because he played in that tournament, which to you and me, we probably think that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's very limited opportunity for injury. I mean, there's always some, but it's a non-contact sport, so it is something he probably would go and play if he wasn't scheduled to play in a school tournament. A serious golfer, guess what they're going to do when they're not playing? They're going to play golf, right? They're going to go out with friends and family and play golf. So that seems a little ridiculous. I don't know many football players that are going to get a group of 22 guys together, put your pads on Sunday afternoon and go play a game.
I thought about that because that's a really good point. I've thought about way back when we were playing in high school. I thought, what was the last thing you wanted to do during the season? was when you didn't have to, was put on your pads again, all of them,
Yeah.
and go compete in some kind of non-school event, right?
Right.
So
Right.
where you're slamming into each other when you just did that on Friday or Saturday, you know.
Yeah. But
Um,
what if there's okay, so what if there's money, scholarships, exposure on the
yeah,
line?
yeah. When exposure is on the line, and that's what's changed, right? From when you and I were in high school, and even 20 years ago, 15 years ago, the whole exposure thing is much bigger these days, and it's much more important because you mentioned money, and there's a lot of money involved, not money that's maybe actually changing hands, right? But
But there will be
there's
some, right?
there will be some, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yep.
some NIL opportunities that obviously are part of this. There's the money that parents pay for their kids to participate in exposure events, go to particular camps, whatever it might be. There's all of that money that's spent. And then, because of the exposure, there's a lot of money on the line for the players, not only to get a scholarship, which we know how much that's worth for particular schools, but also the NIL money, right? That's above and beyond the scholarship that you're getting at a particular school. So we've mentioned this a bunch of times in the past when we've talked about topics like this, but money plays a money is kind of top of the list, unfortunately, and even now in high school, right, with a lot of the different things that are happening over the past 5 years or so.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Whether it's
If you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact REMAX Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com.
whether it's transactional in that tournament director, I'll say, or that tournament company, or that's someone who's putting on a showcase or a combine event. The transaction of getting $100 from a player, to be in this combine event. Yeah, it's invite only, but that invite comes with $100 too. You got to pay.
right,
Of course, we got
exactly,
to pay our people and everything. We're not making any money.
yeah,
And or the future, or which you talked about with the NIL, Joe. and
yeah,
and I think when what you said in your intro is right about, maybe it makes some people angry. We've talked about the infiltration of club sports into, heavily, obviously, for years into basketball, heavy into soccer, heavy into volleyball.
right,
Hockey has a grip, an iron grip on those players. And we have experienced this because we both had softball players.
right,
And I can remember, if I can share this, conversations we had where you were at a quote unquote exposure tournament with your
right.
daughter, who was an excellent softball player and a recruited softball player. And you would call me and be like, so the exposure here is three coaches. You'd be there on Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, and
Right.
you'd say,
Yes.
I feel like I could shoot a cannon off and not hit a coach from anywhere. And if
Right.
they were from somewhere, they were from schools that were so specialized. It was. I remember you telling me the Milwaukee Technical College is here.
Yes.
Asking, does
Exactly.
Anna want to go there? No,
No.
no, for softball
Right.
or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what you're sold and what actually is the reality, are two different things, in my
Right.
opinion. Now, I think it's probably different for those elite top, very, very top athletes. I think maybe it's a little bit different for them, but the
Yeah.
whole club and travel thing is really kind of a uh, you know, can I say it's a money grab? Can I
Sure.
say that? I
Yeah.
mean, because I do think it is. And I know the coaches and the programs, the travel and club programs, I mean, they put in so much time, so much effort, all of that. And, they're, I feel like their hearts are in the right place, right? But I don't feel like that is met with the same kind of enthusiasm from the colleges and the universities that these travel and club teams and the parents of those kids who are playing on those teams are putting into that money, effort, all of that. I don't think it's reciprocal.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's
I
two
really don't.
forces kind of playing against each other to me. It's the force of wanting to compete, right? So if you're a coach, and I was a coach, I coached my daughter's softball team, and it was awesome. I love the players. We had a great time. We had a tight
Mm-hmm.
knit group,
Yeah.
and we wanted to compete. We wanted to be in tournaments, but those tournaments cost a lot of money. And if they were exposure tournaments, it was even more money. And you would get there and you'd want to win, right? And you'd
Right.
constantly have in the back of your mind. So I had 15 players on the team. I could only play 9 or bat 10 or whatever it was. And, so all right, I want to win, but my 15th player's parents paid the same amount as my number one player's parents. They also bought a hotel room. They also love softball and want to be and would like to play in college and
Right.
get some exposure. But
Mm-hmm.
boy, the competitor in me as a coach or the team, when if you play your 15th player, not that you would have someone flat out bad on a club team like that, but it's still your 15th player for a reason.
Right.
And you would feel these two things clashing. And I don't know if you and I talked about it or if it was someone else that was saying, so let me get this right. I paid $500 to play in this exposure tournament. I bought 3 nights hotel. I took 2 days off of work, and my son or daughter played 2 innings or whatever it was for the 3 days. Is that right? Is that how this works? And it's like, yeah, sorry, that's how this works. But the money all counts the same, regardless of who it's from on the other side of that tournament.
Yeah. So, do you think the IHSA or the member schools of the IHSA who voted for this particular proposal, um, do you think it's to loosen the rules to protect school sports, or because school sports were losing the battle or are losing the battle anyway to travel and club sports?
In some cases, they're losing the battle. I've heard of several, and I don't think it's football yet.
Right.
And we talk primarily football here, but I think in soccer, I think in hockey, I think in volleyball, I think there's a lot of sports out there that kids and players were saying, nobody comes and recruits at a high school soccer game. Whereas if I go play in a tournament with 12 teams, a high level tournament on the weekend, there are going to be college coaches there, whether they're from whatever schools, but
Right.
there are going to be coaches there. And so it doesn't make sense for me to play on a Wednesday afternoon, with 11 people in the stands and no college coach around, and against lesser competition that doesn't benefit me or my future. Whether that's right or wrong thinking for high school sports, is probably a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But that's definitely something where I think what you're saying is that there was kind of this win or lose. There's a way that soccer player, for example, can do both, and hopefully everyone's happy with that.
Yeah, hopefully everyone is happy. But as we mentioned multiple times in other episodes, uh, there's never 100% of the people who are happy, right?
No.
No. And one of the things that always kind of plays into this for me, especially as travel and club starts to take on more importance than maybe the high school teams do as far as exposure and recruiting and, opportunities that might be there, is, it's travel and club cost a lot of money, right? They cost a
Yeah.
ton of money. We know how much they cost because we've
Right.
both been a part of it. You've been a part
Yes.
of it.
Yeah.
And not every family with a talented kid, whatever sport it might be, can take advantage of those travel and club, teams.
Right.
So it's really the haves and the have-nots again, but just from a travel and club standpoint, in my opinion.
Yeah. So you have to buy your way into tournaments, right? And
Right.
you have to buy your way onto the team. You've got to pay for a uniform. You've got to pay for the travel. Not everyone can do that. There may be the best. Let's take it back to what you and I did. There may be the best softball player in the world that can't afford any one of those things, sitting at home. And the only opportunity that softball player has is to play high school, and no one will ever know about it. And
Right.
because they didn't have the opportunity to play on a high level team that was willing to pay and get into 12 tournaments a summer.
Yeah. And to some extent, there's got to be some blame, if we're going to say blame, put on the colleges and the recruiters for the particular sports from the colleges, because we know in most sports, 90% of them, high school, I think at this point, maybe other than football, although that's changing too.
Yeah.
Um, the colleges only do the recruiting at the travel and club events, exposure events, right?
Right.
Um, so they've kind of perpetuated that whole environment or that whole atmosphere that, yeah, it's great. You play in your high school team, big thumbs up. But are you going to be at this tournament a month from now, where we can see you and we can see 100 other players as well? And I understand it. The
Yeah.
budgets are limited.
Right.
Whatever it
Right.
might be, and yeah, you want to go somewhere, but um, it wasn't always that way. They used to do it differently, right? And this is convenience, for sure. Recruiting, just at travel or club exposure events, but they can't complain about it, about all the stuff that's going on, if they're helping perpetuate it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you said it. You said it in their budgets. It makes a lot more sense for me to go to a weekend tournament where there's 100 players that I could see.
Right.
Just so until high school says, and I think they have started doing this in some of those sports. They have to try and mimic that. But boy, then you start talking about, how do we get there, and bus schedules, and do we have enough for the soccer, softball, baseball, basketball, volleyball to all be at a tournament on a given weekend, and do we allow them then to travel separately, and what's the downside of that, and so there's so much that gets brought up. When it's a high school sport, the bar is higher for them to clear, to try and mimic what they do on the travel level.
Yeah.
And they used to have summer baseball. There used to be, and I think there's still summer baseball, but it's, again, it's even less. Summer high school baseball is, that is one step above, beer league softball, right? And that's about how I should only speak for myself. That's
I was
kind
going
of
to say,
how we
playing in
took
your
it.
backyard or something. It's
Yeah,
one
that's how
step
we
above
took it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, but travel's not like that. Travel
Right.
is the preparation, like you said, the hours the coaches put in, the planning, the parents, all that. So it is it's much more intensified. But Yeah, but it's and we haven't even touched on it, and I think we probably will, but what does all this mean for football?
Right. So football's a little different still, even
Yes.
though we've seen some of the things that are happening where, whoever is pushing football towards this whole travel club based, um, model as well. But football is still, I think, mostly school based, right?
Hmm.
It's a little bit more regulated, I think, from a standpoint of contact and those kinds of things, how much contact you can have. Um, it's it's team dependent, so it's a little bit different that way as well. If you really want to see somebody play on a team environment football and it's travel or club, you're not going to see a travel or club 11 on 11 football game, right? Not
Not
going to
yet.
see that. Not yet. But
Yeah.
you see 7-on-7 and the proliferation of 7-on-7 for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's becoming just as big as actual games, right? And maybe even better from a standpoint of going and seeing for a college. I'm thinking about exposure and recruiting now again. For a
Hmm.
college, they would probably rather go to a 7-on-7 tournament to see quarterbacks, wide receivers, some running backs, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Skill positions. Yeah.
skill positions. Now, they're not going to go there, and I feel sorry for the linemen, right? Because the linemen aren't going to put on pads and go smack into each other in a travel and club environment. Do you think? Or
I think.
do you think that's down the road? They're
Oh,
going
I
to do
think
that.
I think it is. I think it is right down the road.
Yeah.
I think I would not be surprised to see a 7-on-7 slash lineman 1 day event where you come and you put teams together and they're running off cards and the linemen are doing one-on-one pass rush. They're only in helmets,
Right.
but they're doing something like that. And I think if you're a coach and you don't have something documented about how you're going to handle this and what you are going to allow your players to do, I think you're making a mistake if you
Yeah.
don't address it this winter, and say, next, have something that you are going to hand to your players and your players' parents or guardians that says, here is how we will handle any non-school related 7-on-7 tournaments, combines, etc. You know, you our team is first because you know how a football schedule works.
Yeah.
It is there. Yeah, yes, you can schedule something on maybe Saturday or Sunday and attend that. But as a coach, do you really want 3 of those events during the season where you're exposed to injury and that would be number one. But
Right.
at what point does that then become more important than your game, especially if you're on a team that's not competing?
Hmm.
Joe, can you see a scenario, and I've talked about this before, where there is a combine on Saturday morning and there's a team and that team's not very good or doesn't have a very good record, and a player sits out the game Friday night because they don't want to injure themselves for the combine on Saturday morning.
I have thought about that scenario multiple times, Dan, especially after this passed. And, there's a couple of things that have come to mind. First, it was anybody who schedules a combine during the football season for football players, you know, I, I would boycott if I were a coach. But what I also realize is that anytime something is allowed, and this bylaw allows that, people are going to push the boundaries of the rule or the law, right? And
Yes.
even though they know maybe we probably shouldn't do that during the season, but it's the best time to do it. The kids are at peak
Right. They're
performance
yep.
level.
Yep.
This would be the great time for college coaches to see them, blah, 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 all of that. It's going to happen. Maybe
Yeah.
not right away, but it's going to happen at some point.
Right. And colleges play on Saturdays mostly, but not all,
Mm-hmm.
but they all now, the big schools have GMs. So imagine how this can be sold, right? Because it's a trickle down effect too, because you've got less spots. Look at Indiana. Indiana's average age, was it over 22 or something?
I know it was over 20.
Yeah, it
For
was
sure.
old.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
they are an old team. And
They don't look old.
yeah, not to you and I,
Yeah,
but
right. Yeah.
but they but so that we've talked about this before. There's the squeeze is happening. So do you want to find a way to stand out, wide receiver X, and this might be your shot. You guys run the ball 90% of the time, but you're a really good player, or you think you're a really good player. You've been told you're a really good player. This is your one shot this year to stand out. And there are limited opportunities for you to make an impression on a given school. So are you going to go? It's like you would feel pressure. And whether my coach boycotts it, slams the table and says absolutely not, then I think you're going to have problems. And I think it's going to be a question that is asked of coaches. How do you feel about my son attending a combine in season? I know that question is going to be asked by parents, and decisions are going to be made with that in mind.
For sure. And, unfortunately, I think, you hate to deny a particular player or kid the opportunity to get themselves in front of whatever it might be,
Yeah, it might be their one shot.
their one shot. But for a coach, and you just said this, our coaches, they're going to have a policy. If they
Oh yeah.
don't, what's going to happen is, so you've got, I've got my three best players. I'm going to let them sit out the second half or sit out this game because they've got this combine where they're going to get this great exposure during the season. What do all the other kids think and the parents think that are on that team? Do you treat certain kids differently, within this rule or within this bylaw? I mean,
Talk about a can of worms.
and I'm not sure the coaches are prepared to handle that.
Yeah, it's why they've got to get out in front of it and have a policy now that literally the player signs and says. But and I know what you're saying. Even if they sign it and say I'm only going to one, come back and say, boy, I really want to go to this one, coach. Yeah, but everyone else signed the paper that they're only going to one. Yeah, so I'm going to have to suspend you for the first half, or you make it. The way around it is, well, I'm going to have to punish you, and you run 1040s, at 6:00 in the morning, and that's your punishment.
Right.
And so I mean, I guess there's going to be multiple ways that coaches can handle this, but it's going to be a thing. I mean, I hate to sound like this guy, the old guy, but mark my words, it's going to be a thing.
It is going to be a thing. Anytime something can be a thing, it is going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens when you've got parents and kids and money and future and all of that involved. And if there's a way for it to be a thing, or if it is a thing, it's going to be a thing. So you've got to prepare for it.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know how I would prepare for it if I were a coach. Honestly, I don't know how I would treat it. I wouldn't want to treat it in a way where I said, everybody, everybody's allowed. Maybe that would be the way. Everybody's allowed to do, one. If there's some event, you need to go to one, but you're not allowed to sit out of the game on Friday night because you've got an event on Sunday.
Oh yeah, that is absolute. Yeah, grounds for whatever punishment's the wrong word, but if you want to, if you were saying, all right, I'm willing to ride the bench for the first half of the next game to do this,
Right.
then
Yeah.
you gotta, if you're, and I guess coaches' recourse is that they, that character of that player. I know it's dangerous to say, but anyone that's going to recruit a player is going to ask their coach, what's he like? Well, he's willing to sit out, the first half to go to a combine.
Yeah.
So there's recourse. And it's not all nice. It's not all, balloon animals and rainbows. It's going to be,
I love balloon animals.
it's going to get ugly. It's going to make the paper. There's going to be stuff and things.
Yeah. So do you think this opens the door to club football? Do you think there's all of a sudden, maybe not right away, but down the road a bit, you're going to start seeing, clubs come up and creating club football teams so kids will play on that team versus playing on their high school team, and then there'll be a proliferation of club teams that all of a sudden start playing each other.
I think you're more likely to see that because you have numbers in some area that can't support given teams. So I think that would be a slower evolution. So if you've got teams in, whatever location and say, hey, we've got 10 freshmen, the team B has 12 freshmen, we've got to put this together. And that is, while it's just a what do they call those? Like a combination of schools. Co-ops. Thank you.
Yeah.
When, so you see co-ops first, and then you start to see, all right, everyone is a co-op, and I don't want to play for this co-op. I want to play for that. And it starts to turn into it where it's almost club-like, but still maybe under the IHSA or high school affiliate.
Yeah.
I think to come into and to start a club team that doesn't play it, it doesn't play a regular high school schedule, and to find those teams, I think you've got all the insurance and you've got, the expense of everything, and someone gets hurt, who's covering all that. And, so I think there's probably a lot of questions that really people wouldn't want to go through, at least at this point in time. But could it be the case in 20 years? Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. As soon as you could, if it could be monetized, right? Club football monetized versus high school football, which is not necessarily monetized, to some extent. I feel like somebody's going to push the boundaries at some point and say, we're going to create, whatever state it is, but we've got these 8 club teams that have been created throughout the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
And they're going to play each other.
Yeah, I could see that. That doesn't seem far-fetched to me at all. Mm-hmm. There are those that we've heard from that say, we've already got a club system.
Right.
We've heard from those, and I think a step into that direction is free transfers. And where the transfer process is super easy and not anything that's enforced like it used to be, or can be worked around in one way, shape, or form. I think that's a step toward it.
Yeah. I mean, you could fend off club teams if you allowed free transfers, right? But you're going to end up with club teams
under a high school name.
Teams under a high school name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, with regional schedules and transfer policies that are open in some states, completely open, and we're seeing more of it. It's probably going to double again, right, from last year to this year, the number of transfers. So all that is a step towards a club-like scenario.
Yeah, it is. Well, this is something which is not going away.
No.
And
be prepared.
Be prepared. Right?
Yeah.
And don't
as
be
a coach, be
about
prepared.
It.
Yeah.
If you're angry about it and you don't like it, then maybe you should go talk to your school, your athletic directors, whatever.
Right.
Say, hey, you gotta somebody's got to put the brakes on this, and we can't have everybody voting for this when they haven't thought about the ramifications and possibly what could happen down the road. Because once you let the genie out of the bottle,
Yep. Cat out of the bag.
cat out of the
Toothpaste
bag,
out of the tube. Yeah. Pick one.
cows out of the barn.
Right. Then Katie bar the door.
Yeah, I mean, you can't put it back in. You're right. I hate to see certain things like this where maybe it hasn't completely been thought through, and now, a year or 2 years from now, when people see things going completely awry, they're trying to tweak and put new rules in place. Well, that doesn't work. We've seen how that works before, and it's not going to work with this. So,
the part of the language I saw was our favorite word, waiver.
Waiver.
You can get a waiver.
Yes.
IHSA loves to use the term and the word waiver.
Waivers are good.
Yes.
You can get one of those,
right.
You got it in your hand and fold it up, put it in your back pocket, and you can pull it out whenever you need it.
Waiver.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Got a waiver.
Yes.
That allows me to do this.
Anything I want.
Yes. All right. Okay. So I want to be clear about something before we wrap this up, Dan. And this episode, not about blaming anyone, blaming kids, parents, coaches. It's about recognizing that once the incentives change, behavior changes, whether we like it or not. The new rule doesn't tell athletes to skip their high school games, but it does invite a question that never used to exist, right? Is this game worth the risk compared to what comes next? And once that question is on the table, high school sports are no longer just about the team. They're about managing futures. I understand.
Great point.
Yeah, I understand why this change happened. I understand why families feel
the pressure me too.
They feel. But I also don't want us to wake up one day and realize we quietly kind of traded away something irreplaceable. The idea that showing up for your teammates mattered more than building a resume, right? So, high school sports, in my opinion, doesn't get ruined all at once.
Right.
It erodes when nobody speaks up, nobody sets guardrails, nobody reminds us what made them special in the first place. And that's why I think conversations like this matter, Dan, not to stop change, but hopefully to help guide it. If you're a player or parent or coach listening to this, the question isn't what can I get away with? It's what kind of culture do I want to be a part of? And thanks for being part of this conversation. And we'll see you next time on The Varsity Voices.